Hey guys, Abif here. Today marks 1 year since Undertale's release, and I know what you're thinking already. Talking about Undertale again, I thought that shit died off months ago. Well, I wanted to make a little retrospective kind of video over the past year, my thoughts on the game, how my thoughts have changed, what thoughts haven't changed, and how the game overall has kind of died off in the last year. So I guess I'll just start with what I think of the game. When it first came out, when I first played it, about 9 months ago, last December, I really enjoyed it. I went in blind, and I had a lot of fun figuring everything out, and like all the puzzles are very nice, and all the characters are very charming. The music was fantastic. Still one of my absolute favorite soundtracks. And the plot was very feel good. I think that's something that people tend to ignore about Undertale's plot. They just kind of say, oh, people look too deep into it, it's not as deep as people say it is, it's really edgy. You know, that's fine, you can think of it however you want, but I just had a really nice time playing it. It made me feel very good. It's a very happy game. I had a very good time playing it, and it made me very happy to play it again and again for multiple endings. That was always fun. Now that it's kind of died off, what do I think about it now? Well, it's still a pretty great game. I never really did think it was like the best game ever or anything like that. I didn't even think of it as Game of the Year in 2015. That, for me, went to Mario Maker. But I still really enjoyed it. And now, I think if I were to go back and play it again, while I do think a lot of the magic would kind of be lost because, you know, I've already seen pretty much all the game has to offer, I think it's still a fun game to play. I feel like once you've seen everything, you can't really get much out of replaying the game, as opposed to a game like, say, Super Mario Galaxy. You can 100% the game and have a fun time doing it. It's a really fun game to play. But, you know, give it a year, maybe even a few months, come back to it, replay it, it'll still be fun because it's got that really fun core gameplay to it that makes it really fun to replay. Undertale, however, relies a lot more on its, well, basically everything that isn't the gameplay. Its aesthetics, the soundtrack, and the plot, the characters. All that goes into making it a really great experience. I think Undertale is best described as a really great experience. As a game, it has issues, plenty of issues. One of those being that it has a very low replay value. Not to say that you can't get a lot of hours out of it, you certainly can. There's tons of different endings to find, and a bunch of secrets to look for. It has a lot to offer, but once again, those are all mostly tied to plot stuff. There's not really a whole lot in gameplay, where if you were to come back to it, say, about a year later and play it again, it might still be a decent experience, because maybe it wouldn't be too fresh in your mind at that point, and you will have forgotten a lot of the things that happened that gave it its charm. I'd say Undertale relies a lot on its events. It's very event-driven, and it just, there are a lot of parts of the game where something cool happens, or some funny interaction between characters, and makes you laugh, and puts you in a good mood, and it just makes the game a lot more fun. When it comes down to just the gameplay, when you do something like Genocide Route, it becomes a lot more gameplay oriented, and you find the game's flaws really start to shine when you play through the Genocide Route, or play through the game after having done pretty much everything in the game already. When you go to replay it, the problems lie in that the gameplay is very bare bones. It's basically just walking around doing very simple, while pretty satisfying the first time around, they're still very simple puzzles and random encounters. It's an RPG. I think that's not really an Undertale problem, but more of a problem with the RPG genre in general. But it's still a problem that, Undertale has done a lot to get around other problems of the genre, like how oversaturated it kind of is. Like 16-bit RPGs, there are a lot of them, and it's hard to make one stand out from all the rest. So having that battle mechanic of making the game more like a shoot 'em up in battles than a standard turn-based RPG gives it that edge that makes it stand out among other RPGs in terms of gameplay. And that's fun, and that's really refreshing, and it made someone who really doesn't enjoy RPGs too much, like myself, able to get into it very easily and have a great time with it. It still falls into that category of just not unique enough to make it have good replay value. So I do still think it's a great game, and I really loved the experience that it gave me when I first played it for the first couple of times. However, a year later, I don't think it holds up as well. Certainly not best game of all time material. Certainly not. Not even really game of the year for that year. While others may think differently, that's fine. I just think it hasn't really held up that well. And as far as the community for it goes, it has certainly died down. Back in 2015, when the game came out, until like May of 2016, it was everywhere. You could not escape it if you tried. If you were on any kind of social media during those 6 months, like around anywhere gaming related, you'd know about Undertale. You'd see it somewhere. It was everywhere. You really couldn't escape it. And because of that, it got on a lot of people's nerves. People that didn't play the game saw it as a nuisance because they saw it everywhere. And that's understandable. I see things like Overwatch on my timeline still, to this day, all the fucking time. And it annoys me. I have no interest in the game. I have no interest in playing the game. And seeing the community fucking rave about it all the time is kind of annoying. And it puts me off to the game even more. That's understandable. And while I really don't like the fact that that happens, and I think a game should be judged on its own merits and not on its community at all, hence why I thought Undertale was such a great game, it has such a terrible community, which, let's be fair, it really does. It has a lot of cancer in there, you know. Don't get me wrong, there are a lot of great remix artists, stuff like that, in the Undertale community that have made amazing works. Even myself, I put, not to say that I'm amazing or anything, but I've put a lot of work into tons of Undertale Mario paints, and I'm maybe returning to that soon. But it can only last so long. You can only watch so many remixes of the same however many songs on the soundtrack. But yeah, it's kind of just the community has really died out for it, and I think that's because of how much the game lacks in its replayability. Because people weren't able to consistently come back to it and do more things with it, the community kind of died off. Compare that to a game like Minecraft, which, yeah, it has a really bad community, one of the worst, and I think the reason for that is because it continues to be so popular. The thing with Minecraft is that it's theoretically infinite. You can do pretty much anything with it, along with a very, very strong modding community. It's a game that pretty much refuses to die. It will not. It never will die. I'm calling it now. This game will never die. The community will always be around, always making things for it, making mods, skins, texture packs, all that stuff. There's always going to be channels dedicated to it on YouTube. Let's plays from 9-year-olds that don't know what they're doing. Even myself did that. It's everywhere, and I think that ties in greatly to its massive replay value. Whereas Undertale kind of died off because you can't really do anything more with it at this point. It's been stretched out as much as possible to the point where there's not much left to do with it. So, as a result, the community kind of dies. And it's kind of sad, honestly, because I think while the community did have a lot of bad, it also had a lot of good. And I loved seeing great new content, especially with the remixes for the soundtracks, artists making really beautiful art inspired by the game. And I feel like while the community has died down for it, and while the game doesn't really hold up as a game, I think as an experience, it will still go down as a big inspiration to a lot of future game developers. And recently, the game's creator, Toby Fox, made a little post on the Undertale blog as his own kind of retrospective, where he said, he mentioned in it that all he hopes for is that it inspires future game developers or musicians, and he's received a lot of letters and emails from fans that say they have been inspired by Undertale to make their own content, which is beautiful to me. And that really speaks to me, because as someone who wants to go into video game development for a career, I look at Undertale, I look at its impact, and I look at how people are creating games and music and trying to get into that as a career because they were inspired by this game. And I see that and I think, this is what I want to do. Maybe not make a game as big as Undertale that makes a huge impact on the community as it did, but I want to make things that inspire other people to make great things as well. I want to just continue that. I want to pass on great content in the video game world, and I think Undertale is a good representation of what can come from that. When you really put passion into a project like that, it can really have an impact on the community and aspiring game developers and musicians, people that want to create. You can make something that inspires people to pursue that. And I think that's the most beautiful thing about Undertale now, is that, while it may not hold up as a game and may not be as fun to replay a year later, it can still go down as an inspiration for developers and musicians that were inspired by Toby Fox's work, and I love that about it. So I guess that kind of wraps it up. I don't really have anything else to say. I say, in retrospect, the game definitely wasn't as amazing as everyone, put it out to be when it first came out. Now, I think it's great. It's still great as an experience, as an inspiration, but as a game, kind of falls a little flat after a year. So, I think it's important to bring things like this up. When something as huge as Undertale comes in and makes such a huge impact on the community that it did, I think it's important to look back on it after about a year or so and really, really analyze what it did and what it continues to do. Undertale's a very interesting case study in the gaming community. So I just wanted to give my thoughts on how things have changed and how things haven't changed and whatnot. So that's it. I'm gonna end the video now. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you later.